welcome back. I'm Maya with Simply Bloom. I hope you enjoyed that little flower garden harvesting that I included at the beginning. It just brought back all my happy feels for summer. I'm currently filming this January 31st, so not quite gardening season yet. And as I was getting ready and thinking about all the seeds I wanted to plant for my cut flower garden this year, I thought, you know what, why don't I just do my top 10 annual seed varieties for cut flower gardens. And I feel like if you just have these 10, like if you're starting a cut flower garden for the first time, if you have like these 10, I feel like that's really all you need. There's a lot more other ones that are much more, I feel like a little bit more tricky to do, like Lisianthus, Bells of Ireland. Bells of Ireland is my all-time favorite flower to grow, but it can be kind of tricky to start by seed. So anyways, that one's not on the list, but it is my favorite, one of my favorites for cut flowers. I have my little notes here. So if you see me glancing down, that's why. So I have included everything from direct sow. So that means you can just after your last frost of the year, you can directly plant the seeds right in the ground. They don't need to be started indoors. So if you don't have grow lights or lack of space, these are really good for you. And actually the first two, I feel like if you're just getting your feet wet in cut flowers and so you want to try selling at a local farmer's market or whatever, I feel like these first two are really all you need, because if you just had bouquets of just these two by themselves would be beautiful. So the first one, sunflowers. I love sunflowers. You can see my watch band has sunflowers on it. So there's a couple different kinds of sunflowers that I personally like to grow. I've grown so many different varieties. One that I really like for cut flowers is the Pro Cut series, and they come in every color: plum, white, orange, yellow, like an apricot, peachy color, bicolored. They are really, really good sunflowers. Average about 5 to 6 feet tall. They are pollenless and they have the perfect size flower for, I feel like, arrangements. Some of the sunflowers that you grow, they have like massive heads that are just unrealistic for putting in bouquets. The Pro Cut series have really good size flower heads. The only drawback of those is they are single stem. So once you cut them, they're not going to produce another flower. So they recommend, or any, like when you order seeds, I like to order them from Johnny's. They recommend doing a succession planting. So that means every 2 weeks you can plant another section of those sunflowers. What I love about the Pro Cut series is each color kind of has its own bloom time, if that makes sense. So I believe it's the Pro Cut plum. It's either the Pro Cut plum or the Pro Cut red. I'm pretty sure it's the plum. That one starts first, and then it's just like kind of like a wave of each color. Now there is some overlapping, you know, but I just kind of go through each color as they come, and then when I'm finishing with one color, then the next one's like starting. So that's what I do. I live in Zone 3, northern Minnesota. We have a very small growing period. So if I lived in a warmer zone with a longer period, then I would definitely succession plant. The other type of sunflowers are branching sunflowers. So those will have one stem, and along the stem branches out, and it has multiple types or multiple heads of flowers. So those I would consider more of a cut and come again, not necessarily a cut and come. So a cut and come again flower is you cut it, it branches, and it flowers again, and then you cut it, it branches, it flowers again. So the branching sunflowers, you get more than one flower head. It doesn't necessarily branch where you cut the head off, but it's just always producing more. So I think if you just have a bouquet of sunflowers by itself, that's all you need, and it will be gorgeous. The next flower that I put are zinnias. Zinnias range in all sizes. You can get short ones, tall ones, same with sunflowers. They are cut and come again flower. So what I just explained is you cut the flower head, it's gonna make more. And the more you cut and harvest the flowers, the more flowers it will make. Zinnias come in all different types of colors, so the bright cacao colors to the more softer pinks and muted tones. They come in tiny flower heads, and then some get like 4 to 6, I think it's 4 to 6 inches across are the Benary Giants. So those are more like the dahlia type flowers that get really big. My personal favorite zinnia are the Queenie series. So there's the Queenie Lime Orange, Queenie Lime with Blush, Queenie Lime Peach, and Queenie Lime Red. The Queenie Lime Red and the Queenie Lime with Blush are my two favorite. They have like the green kiss with like either a blush or a red. And I'm not a huge fan of bright popping red colors, but this is more of like a mauve-y red, if that's a thing. I think they're the perfect size flowers. So they can work as like the main focal flower, or they can also work as filler flowers as well. And they are absolutely gorgeous. I love them. Again, if you live in a super long growing period, you could plant a second succession later in the year. I have such a short growing season. These last me the whole entire season. They are a cut and come again, so that means they will always produce, but they do kind of teeter out at the end. Next, one of my favorites are Scabiosa, or the pincushion flower. Now these you are recommended to start indoors about 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost. My personal favorites are the Merlot Red, the Black Knight, which they both have kind of this like deep burgundy reddish color. Again, I keep saying red. I don't think it's red. It's more like a burgundy color, and it matches really well with pretty much any other color I've planted. And also with the Queenie series of zinnias, those two go really well together. Another thing about the pincushion flowers is after the flower fades away, it produces a really pretty seed pod. Now, there is one type of Scabiosa or pincushion flower that produces better, I think, seed pods than the other, and that is the star flower. The flower itself is not that appealing to me. I don't really care for it. It's just a little white flower, but the seed pod that it produces afterwards is gorgeous. It's just like this big sphere. It looks like a disco ball kind of, and it's beautiful to tuck into arrangements. Next one is the snapdragons. Now you do have to start these fairly early indoors, so if you don't necessarily have the space or setup to do indoor growing, you could try winter sowing. That's where you plant them in like milk cartons or water jugs, and then you place them outside while it's still winter time. Try growing it that way, but you do need to start them 8 to 10 weeks beforehand. And I love these, I guess they're considered spike flowers. I like to use them as my framework. I normally start with anything spiky, so like the snapdragons, they're kind of that tall flower. I create a frame with those, and then I fill it in with other flowers as well. But my personal favorite is the Rocket Mix. That is, I've tried other varieties and they've done well, but there's something about the Rocket Mix where it got very sturdy, strong stems. Now you can stake the snapdragons, it's recommended. I don't. So if there's a really strong winter storm, they kind of topple over, but it gets these really unique movement through the stems, and it makes the arrangements look a little whimsical if everything's not straight up and down. Another beautiful snapdragon is the Madam Butterfly Mix. So that's more like a double rough leaf flower versus the Rocket Mix is just a single flower. Next one I love is Statice. Cannot speak enough good things about Statice. It's a great filler flower. It dries incredibly well. So you put in an arrangement, and then what I would do after the whole arrangement kind of was past its prime, the Statice still looked incredible, and I would just pop the Statice out, cut the stems because by then it was dry anyways, and just put in a vase and just dried perfectly like that. And that was just a little arrangement that I had, dried arrangement. Statice comes in all different types of colors. Everything I've grown I've absolutely loved, so I don't think there's one that's better than the other. Just get Statice and you will love it. Another great one is Celosia. There's two different types of celosia. There's more of like a plume-like celosia, looks like kind of like feathers, and then there's another one that's called coxcomb, and the best way I can describe it is it looks like a brain. I have not grown that one yet. I guess I can't get past the shape. I prefer the more plumy celosia. I really like to grow the pampas plume because it includes several colors that just match really well with the colors that I like to put in a bouquet. With celosia, you are recommended to start 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. Another one very similar to celosia is amaranth. However, amaranth can get gigantic. I grew a couple different types of amaranth last year. That was my first time growing amaranth, and my all-time favorite of those by far was the red spike. Again, kind of a deep burgundy color. I think you're recognizing a theme here. It was branching, so the more I cut, the more plumes it produced. I found that if I kept cutting it, the plumes were more of a manageable size. If you just let it go, they can get giant and massive, which are really good for some bigger arrangements, but I do most of my arrangements in mason jars. So I like the smaller plumes a little bit better. Fits a little bit better in a mason jar. Moving on, Rudbeckia, also known, some varieties are known as Black-Eyed Susan. So these are great, I feel like, if you don't necessarily have the space for sunflowers. They're much shorter. The flower looks like a sunflower, but much smaller, much more manageable size. My two favorite are Prairie Sun, which is this beautiful multicolored yellow flower with a green center. Oh, it's just so bright, so cheerful. I love it. And then the other one is Cherry Brandy, which is a wine burgundy color. Recommended to start inside 5 to 7 weeks before your last frost. Another one that's incredible are Cosmos. But Cosmos, when you pick them and it's 85 degrees high humidity, they instantly just wilt and droop. But after you put them in water, after about an hour, they perk back up. But they are drama queens, let me tell you. But they are so gorgeous. Cut and come again flowers. They have beautiful ferny foliage that just kind of whispers in the breeze. And I've heard some people using the foliage, like the leaves themselves, as filler greenery, not just the flowers. So it's like a dual purpose plant. All Cosmos are beautiful. Few of my personal favorites are the Cupcake Blush. Best way I can describe that is like this blushy pink colored flower, and it looks just like a cupcake liner that's been like kind of opened up, and it's gorgeous. I also love any of the double Cosmos. Like I grew the Double Click Mix Cosmo, which is this beautiful burgundy, pinks, white, double roughly flowers, gorgeous. And then I love the Seashell Mix as well. The seashells, the petals actually like curled up to form like a little seashell shape, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I loved it. Cosmos, you can direct sow as well. You can also start them indoors, but they do not need much time indoors at all. So definitely probably a better one to direct sow. And number 10, I am going to throw in a number 11. I'll explain that in a minute. But number 10, again, just because I say number 10 doesn't mean it's like the last on the list. They're all wonderful, and I can't really say which one's better than the other than the sunflowers and zinnias. Those are at the top. But the last one I am covering, besides the bonus one, are straw flowers. They form these just unique flowers, and they feel like straw. Like when you touch it, it's kind of stiff like straw. They are great for drying, just like the Statice. They will dry just like they look. Bright, vibrant colors. I've grown so many different colors. Again, just like the Statice, there really isn't one that's better than the other. White, pinks, orange, apricots, you name it, there's a color in that straw flower variety. And that is also another one just like the Statice, where if you have an arrangement, a lot of the people I gave them away to, the arrangement would fade, and they just clipped out the straw flower and made dried arrangements with the straw flower that were in their arrangements. Okay, number 11, not technically in seed starting annual. It's an annual in my area, zone 3. A lot of things are annuals in zone 3. And that is gladiolus. Now, when I first saw gladiolus, I was not a fan. I'm like, I don't like it. I'm not going to plant it. And my husband surprised me. He went into town one day and he came back with a bunch of gladiolus corms. That's their bulbs. I was like, oh, I wasn't planning on growing it, but since I have them, let's just plant it and see what happens. And I'm now in love. So just like the snapdragons where I say I use those for my framework, well, before I use the snapdragons, I actually use the gladiolus. Now, sometimes the flowers get kind of big, so you can just kind of nip the tops and the bottom, remove a couple of the blooms to make it fit into your smaller vases. But I love gladiolus. So easy. Throw the corm in the ground, water it in, watch it grow. Gorgeous plant. I love it. Okay, so that is my list for my top 10 plus the bonus one for a cut flower garden. I feel like if you have these, that's really all you need to begin with. There's a lot of other beautiful ones that you can add in, a little bit more tricky. There's a lot out there that I didn't touch that's direct sow, but these are my personal favorites. I grow a lot more. Another thing that I love to use are perennials, things in the landscape. So I was thinking about doing another video touching on my favorite perennials to use as cut flower gardens. One thing I want to touch, if this is your first year starting a cut flower garden, a lot of the things that you can direct sow, I personally prefer to start them indoors anyways, especially if you don't know what the seedlings look like. I've had some problems with that. This will be my 3rd year growing a designated cut flower garden, so I don't have a whole lot of experience under my belt. But some of the things I didn't know what the seedlings looked like. I direct sowed them, watered them in, kept watering them to make sure they were, well hydrated before they germinated. And next thing I know, there's just this blanket of green, of weeds coming up, and I was afraid to weed anything because I wasn't sure if it was the seedling or not. And I ended up just ripping everything out, tilling it all over again, and I planted it with something else. So if you don't know what the seedlings look like, and if you have the space to do it indoors, just start them indoors. That way you already have a nice plant that you can transplant out, and it's so much easier to see and to weed properly when you have an actual plant started. So learn from my mistake, and if you're just not sure, just do it that way. But that is it for this video. I hope this helps if you weren't quite sure what to grow. These are my favorites. Again, look for a video I'll be doing on my favorite perennials to use as cut flower garden, because I use so many perennials in my arrangements. But that is it. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.